3, 2, 1.
Hello, folks. Welcome to another live poetry reading. Tonight's reading has Louise Moises, Greg Ruud, Wendy Blomseth, and Kris Bigalk, which I think I just butchered, didn't I, Kris? As usual, we'll start with a couple poems that I wrote. First one is called My Dogs Won't Let Me Kill Myself. Whenever the thought appears, they give a gentle nudge or beg for a treat. They, in their way, ask to go outside, to lay in the snow, knowing full well their beauty. The night stays put away. The oven only comes on to cook. At night, I curl up in the couch to hide, but by them I am spied, and a whine or a howl, a bark or a jab with a paw forces me to move. There's always a reason to go on, sometimes trite, sometimes profound, sometimes to see how long. My next poem is called Prescription, to fill or not to fill. Will a pill put money in my bank account, pay off my mortgage, stop the cyclone of never-ending debts? Could a pill prevent the many, many medical visits my wife needs? Would my taking a pill ease her pain? Could a pill clean my house, clear away the clutter and debris? Maybe it would fix my car. Would a pill make my poetry profound and delightfully musical? Or is that something else I need to do myself? I was prescribed a pill once. It only made me tired and, you guessed it, more depressed. Suicidal? Not seriously. But I hear a pill's side effects can change that. Would a pill help, or would the mystery of perception be the answer? I don't know, but the sadness will slip, lethargy will lapse as soon as I win the lottery. My first reader tonight is Louise Moises, born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area where she still resides. Over the years, she has been a teacher, a storyteller, a puppeteer, and the owner of an antiquarian bookstore, along with being a wife, mother, and grandmother. Now widowed, she enjoys traveling with her cat in her 23-foot RV, exploring out-of-the-way places that inspire her writing. Her poems and stories have been recognized by the literary divisions of San Mateo, Marin, and Alameda County Fairs, the Ina Kobrich Circle, and the Artists Embassy International. And her poems have been published in a number of online venues and several anthologies, including High Shelf Press, A Gathering, Windless Streamers, among others. Currently, she enjoys sharing her poems via Zoom poetry meetings and, if lucky, in person. Take it away, Louise.
Good evening from Richmond, California, and thank you very much for inviting me to read. We'll start with a little family history. Moonlight. Through the portal in steerage, seasick from motion and confinement, my Italian grandmother must have seen moonlight reflected on the waves. Down the gangplank to Ellis Island, timid and frightened in this new land. Perhaps the round-faced moon created dazzling diamonds on the crown of the lady. On the ferry, on to the mainland, on across the country, anxious to join her young husband, she must have watched phases of the moon through the train window. How the crescent balanced on the Rocky Mountains, set behind the Sierras, finally reflecting itself on the San Francisco Bay. I never knew my grandmother. She and her husband, my grandfather, perished in the flu epidemic of 1918. I can only imagine what she saw, the good life she anticipated. My father flew in blimps. In World War II, my father flew in blimps, great gray whales of the air, floating on a hum of small engines, dipping above the house where my mother lived before she was my mother or he my father. She ran out onto the porch, wildly waving in her innocence, imagining he could hear her voice throwing her love to the sky, where the blimp teetered above the house. From my travels, I'm particularly fond of the Southwest, where there are a lot of arroyos, steep ditches carved out by water, generally, frequently dry, ready to accept flash floods. This is arroyos. In this parched Utah landscape, horses travel in arroyos. On silent hoofs move towards water. A sturdy white mare guides her foal. The rest of the herd follows. Through dry washes, they run towards the spring. I have hidden my love for you in a deep arroyo, when I should have sent it running with the horses, at first too cautious, too fearful of another loss. Before you came, my landscape, parched and arid, like the lands of central Utah. You guided me towards sustaining springs. Together, we watched the horses drink, followed them as they disappeared into arroyos. They left only dust rising above the desert ditches. The sun vanished behind the rolling hills. The stars reflected in the spring. Somewhere beyond the arroyos, the horses hid in protective herds, slept standing up as horses do, while you and I lay beneath the midnight sky in the quiet arroyos of each other's arms. I dreamt of horses at the spring and yielded to the icy water. This one was inspired by watching the news and imagining what remains. Shuffling through ashes, they stick to my shoes, my pant legs, stench of fire, rotting flesh, powdery residue, dust clouds float above the ruin, large rectangular foundation filled with rubble, what's left of our 4-story apartment building collapsed to ground level from constant bombardment. I pace vacant space, naming occupants, some dead, others fled to somewhere. I recite prayers from my childhood, mix Ukrainian with Russian. I kick the legs of a charred chair. It disintegrates around my ankles. Red embers smolder beneath fractured pillars, glowing like eyes of the devil. I inventory what remains, burn my fingers on a metal button, the remnants of someone's clothing. I find a corner of a photograph lacking an image, scattered documents, books with burnt edges, grotesquely twisted bicycle frames, shattered crockery, a panel of empty mailboxes, glass from windows, mirrors, vases, crunching beneath my feet. Then something soft. Afraid to look, I hold my breath. child, small, stuffed bear, missing a leg, covered in ash. I open a refrigerator, standing upright like a tomb, stench of moldy food, nothing fit to eat. On the bottom shelf, 3 unopened cans, beer, soda, tomato juice, precious liquid. I must find my mother. She is so thirsty. And in contrast, we'll conclude with peace is. Peace is a sunset seen through a veil of fog. Lacy waves lapping sandy shore, alone with the tide, salty fragrance of the sea, listening to the mantra of crash and recede, on into infinity. Peace is a pelican, framed against an aqua sky, soaring along the shore, unaware of wars, winging above waves, a prehistoric vision. Would that I could fly on the wings of a pelican. Peace, the discovery of an ancient oak, gnarled, bent, enduring, an elder with stories to tell. Listen, snap of twigs, crack of branches, rustle of grasses around the depths of roots, a history. Peace is a small girl on a big horse, rounding a barrel in a dusty rodeo arena, a crowd of friends, family, and perfect strangers all cheering. Unity of the moment, the many as one. Peace is being alone with the waterfall, chill splash of rushing, roaring water, fragrance of pine, swoop of swallows singing, standing beneath a cascading curtain of water. Peace is witnessing a birth of monarchs. From cracked chrysalises, wet stained glass wings struggling to open and close, thin black legs clinging to feathery fronds of milkweed. Peace is a prayer whispered in shadows, a large clanging bell, angle of ceiling, scent of incense, flicker of candles. Peace is finding a church within your heart. Peace is a solitary figure on a high desert landscape. Scent of heated sage, sky as large as it can ever be. A rocky line where earth meets clouds. Then a simple gesture, a wave of love. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. I really enjoyed the imagery. Our next poet is Greg Ruud. Greg has written and told stories and poetry all his life. He's a former teacher at St. Kate's for the 4-year RN program. He became drawn to a class there in the healing art of poetry. Over the last 2 decades or more, he has met with 16 or so people every 2 months as part of the Minnesota Poetry Therapy Network. Through this group, he has come into his own as a writer of screenplays, short stories, and poetry. He lives in Minneapolis and Tucson with his wife, Paula. He enjoys walking with friends in both places. Take it away, Greg.
Thank you. Well, Ron, and thank you, Louise. Louise, that was wonderful. I heard every single phrase and intonation, and I appreciate it so much. Especially about Utah, anyway. My first poem is called Gratitude. And I'm very fond of trains wherever I am. But in Arizona, when I'm there for 6 months, I hear the train every night. And as many people know, the Wichita Line, that song, well, I feel the train bed, the rails, when I sleep. It's not so much the sound as the feeling in my mattress. And it's very comforting. So here's the gratitude line. The train whistle peals out into the cavernous labyrinths of my soul. The tracks may not be straight and long, but they convey to me a realm that has no room to roam. Ordinary days that fill me with gratitude, and full moon nights that sweep me off in beatitudes. There seems no sound deeper than the train wheels on tracks, a longing native to my dispensary in cryptic telegraph lines that are my future and my past. I don't know anything but this effervescent feeling that contains all heavens and hells in the moment, and yet containing all provisions I may need to journey wherever this dance leads. I think I'll read this one next. Thank you. Mason City. Perhaps it was the rail yard's confluence, or the bright city lights that made them stay more than a day that brought them there. Like we now see so many on their cell phones staying past the length of a call or text, they were transfixed at a confluence. Like many were lured north from New Orleans, blues, Mecca, to Chicago. Newness with blues greats named after the towns they touched on the way. Staying too long has its dangers and rewards. The world would be very different if those farmers hadn't stayed in Mason City more than a day. Our cultures cross-pollinated. The bees went home and spread their news. Transfixed on their cell phones during a revolution in Cuba, and of course, then the internet was shut down. Life will never be the same because of Mason City, the blues, and of course, the cell phone. And let's see, what do I have here? Here's one that comes out of a different part of my brain. Tap, tap, the poetry telegraph. I hear it strong singing in the lines, singing songs of better times. There is no Morse to cover spans that this universe indeed expands. Who am I to set the code, a stream of consciousness to unload? What my being suggests to me is that I nod to banks and streams and keep the beat of water strong. My ear to heart can't listen wrong. Okay, let's try something a little different. Sometimes in the middle of an argument. This is based on one of Timothy Young's pieces that from the men's group in Minneapolis. I improvised for my own relationship. My mouth flies open, my eyes flash, the hair stands up on the back of my neck. I feel laid bare, no place to hide. In our house, the floors squeak when you wish they would shut up. I've had practice trying to avoid the squeaks, but when I'm upset, I seem to forget where the spots are. Then the debris of my irritation piles up in the basement of my discontent. If I would actually try to talk to my wife, I would have to proceed sideways with the comment about our next day's plans, so the force of her ridicule would not tempt me to simply make excuses. As I break the silence, her silence resists even more. Then at the instant where her silence could become a kind of treatment, I must take special care to not get slammed by her excellent barrister skills. I must resist her potential retort just a bit, pushing back without vilifying her, and yield slowly so we can close the conversation together. Let's see. I'll read this one then. Cavernous chambers. A fascination with the heartbreak sounding and the lungs sound whistling chimes. No thoughts of endings on my mind, but see the endless song sublime. The inner workings of my soul as well have cavernous chambers beyond count. As unthought echoes fill the journey, no looking back, just silent shout. And outside all the trees are stirring. I hope the wind my mind blows free, and the last few leaves on winter's hedgerow are all applauding just for me. Man and nature, nature and man, and how they always disagree, only exacerbate the question on human rights and scarcity. Perhaps it's better if trees decide the sharing rules or humble web, unless the trees within ourselves, without the wars, successor is fed. Let's see. Okay. Here's one that's, okay, today I'm orange, outside, spilling into distraction, taking risks with intuitive revolving doors, compressing my intuition, compressing my thoughts into a neutron star. I'm hugely orange, clashing big time. No way am I destined to fashion sanity or subtlety or sobriety. I am TOFW, too orange for words. Today I wish to be blue, blue with yellow, but no bombs. Blue flowing in cool gestures, but blue until fully blunt, controlling what comes next, is largely beyond anyone's real knowing. And one more, why not? Let's see. Astronaut, here you go. My uncle Daryl never flew on planes, a Midwestern farmer who drove his grain into silos along the Minnesota River all his life. Now his life was nearer an end than he would have liked. His wife, Mitzi, convinced him to get on a plane to reach a faraway clinic that might help him. He reluctantly went, scraping up the last of his courage to get on this winged beast. Now flying home proudly, wearing the airship's winged pin on his lapel, he noticed the Minnesota River from his window seat and all the silos he used to drive his grain to. All the ordinary moments of life on the land now seemed extraordinary. Noting all the landmarks of his home from the great sun's arch through the sky, he could have just likely been Neil Armstrong looking back at the earth from the lunar surface. Mitzi looked at him with tears in her eyes. She knew that this vulnerable husband of hers took more than a leap of faith. To board the plane, his resilient yes to life, even in these last days, gave meaning to his life that duties alone can never fill. Thank you.
And thank you, Greg. Very well done. Our next reader is Wendy Hauser-Blomseth. Wendy is a Minneapolis native who has lived coast to coast pursuing a variety of careers. Currently retired, looking for the next great part-time opportunity. She graduated from the University of Minnesota in 1992 with a communications degree focusing on film, video, radio, and TV production. Thus began a serious focus on photography, portrait and fine art photography. In May 2020, Blomseth discovered what a healing therapy writing haiku poetry could be in the years during and following the COVID pandemic crisis. Those years directed her poetic and photographic attention toward her urban garden, city birds, and whimsical garden statuary, always ready to be her muse. Blomseth has begun to pursue publication in international haiku journals. In 2023, the Heterodox Haiku Journal, and in 6/2023, the Leaf Journal of the Daily Haiku. 3 photo poetry books are currently in process. Forest of One Tree, Lockdown 2020 to 2021, Blooming Radiance, Breast Cancer Journey, and In the Moment, Still Life Celebration. Let's hear Wendy.
Well, thank you so much, Ron. This is such an honor to be included in this group, and I'm really loving hearing the style of each person. As you said, I started haiku. For those of you that can remember what was happening in Minneapolis on Memorial Weekend, May 2020, it was quite turbulent. There was riots, there was fires, there was murders. My husband had just came back from having surgery, so it was quite a turbulent time emotionally and citywide. And something pushed me into a new space of writing poetry. So I'm going to click on the share screen. My poetry is chronological, sequential from May 29th until December 31st, all 2020. This is volume 1. I'm working on volume 2, which is going to take care of the next 6 months until Governor Walz released the lockdown. So you'll recognize some events that happened. So I'm going to read these. Most of them have photographs, but not all, because I started my art career as a photographer. So poem number 1, Reaching for Kindness, Love, Peace, and Understanding instead of sorrow. That was when Minneapolis was burning. Forest of One Tree, bends alone in all seasons, hears only her own voice. An escape from stress, take tears to Mother Nature. First responders cope. Flower petals fall, earth moves, sun rises, shadows fall, sheltering in place. Minneapolis burns. Dragon wings fan the flames. Tears are powerless. Keeping our home safe. Chain link fence around our yard. Who's locked in or out? Fences are like walls. Evoke feelings of security. Bullets fly through chains. No map for future. Elections, whomever wins. Sleepless nights ahead. Open and close. Butterfly wings slowly move. We follow her lead. The body is here. The mind is elsewhere. Alone, yet not alone. Emotions walled in. Hold back. Keep silent. Don't share. Surviving lockdown. How long ago did we play together? Abandoned. Remembering when we were close and could hug. May mother sleep tonight. Tests negative tomorrow. Damn this COVID. The summer reader delights her community with poems read out loud. There's no next time. Yesterday's blooms become today's fallen flower. Alone in the dark, quiet for hours, evening recluse. Grocery shelves empty. Stockpiling sanitizer and toilet paper. Last night's image riots. Morning image now is riots. Summer heat. The morning wind blows with dull, hazy, smoky skies. Western US on fire. Sounds. Birds fluttering, man coughing indoors, bridge listeners' ears. Where is all the yeast? Why are people hoarding it? Stocking up on food. Hypnotic beauty, flashes of light, color, smell. Love never changes. Lovely zinnia dances a graceful ballet, sculpture in motion. 5 hours, 4 guests, countless laugh out loud stories, family tell-alls. Visitors return, more family stories revealed. Daughters know it all. House sign, love lives here. Unicorns, gnomes, frogs, and ducks. All lives matter. Kitten jumps on bed. 3 a.m. grooming begins. Not on my face, please. Life has few straight lines. Solid ground supports the way. Haiku, the story. We flew together over oceans and mountains. Travels imagined. Hearing you, I turn. Seeing, I send an air kiss till we butterfly. Gentle human touch, sweet Sunday morning massage, intimate moments. Touching, no talking, hands stroke familiar terrain. I want one more kiss. Cold, dark hall meeting. One moves, one naked pauses. Shall we dance? Shall we? Faith, love, and hope. Tenets to strive for in life. Birds cue for remembrance. Boards and barriers. Protective walls going up. Scared, senseless of count. Silence broken by the sound of a knife chopping on a wooden block. Spoon stirring in bowl. Dinner music plays. 12 weeks of caution. Next steps can be slippery. Hold onto guardrail. Where are we going? What will the future present? One step at a time. Wild grasses frozen. Sparkling frost twinkle like gems. Lockdown freezes all. Candles lit to shine, bright light on the darkest day. Prayers for winter. Majestic power, water spray of hopes and dreams. Tears frozen in time. All prayers answered. COVID-19 vaccines approved. When can we hug again? 1 month from today, new seedlings break through the soil. Snowdrop buds bring hope. Last day of this year, glad to have the drama end. Quiet reflection. New Year's moon, the last evening, the first morning. Wake up to New Year. Bright day lifts spirits. Wind blows in new leadership. Celebrate good times. So that's the end of part one, book part one. I've extended it now to include January 2021 to June 1st, 2021. So still in chronological order, telling the story of my life, my health, the city of Minneapolis, and the events that evolved. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing that, Wendy. I thought it was very well done.
Thank you very much.
The next poet is Kris Bigalk. Kris is a poet and nonfiction writer based in Minneapolis. She is the author of the poetry collections Enough and Repeat the Flesh and Numbers, and her creative nonfiction essays have appeared in the Good River Review and the Rumpus. Kris directs the AFA in Creative Writing program at Normandale Community College, co-coordinates the Write Like Us equity-based creative writing program, and recently took the helm of Trio House Press, a small independent poetry book publisher. Take it away, Kris.
Thank you, Ron. And it was so great to hear all of the rest of your poetry too. I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. Yeah, my book Enough, it came out in November of 2019. So I think I read 2 or 3 times before the lockdown happened. So I'm really happy to be able to read some poems from it for you tonight. So this book, its original title was My Narcissus. It kind of, the figures of Narcissus and Echo kind of weave in and out of the manuscript. I'm not going to read a lot of those poems tonight. I decided I was going to read some of the more springtime versus winter poems, because I think we've had enough of winter. And this poem, this one I'm going to start with, has some allusions to other poems that some of you may recognize. So just I'll see if you, I'll ask my other poets afterwards if you recognize the poems. Where the Light Shines Through. I find pieces of myself in poems written before I was born, about fat gold watches and nude arms waving, about Jennifer's tigers and Blake's tiger, about bending with the remover to remove. I find pieces of myself on the bathroom floor, skin and fingernail shavings, hair, each tiny fragment rife with my DNA, that microscopic cipher, blueprint of all my imperfections. I find pieces of myself in the back of the closet, clothes that used to fit every curve, so I felt beautiful, so I shone. Putting the puzzle together can be so difficult, the picture shifting, the pieces static. Some days I almost finish, and when I look in the mirror, I try not to notice the blank places where the light shines through. When the mirror stops reflecting, when the mirror stops reflecting, when everything you give falls into a hole and you never hear it hit bottom, when the sun stops shining and the clouds keep gathering and blackening, that is alone. That is lonely. That is when you know the winter will end, when you will burst out of this seed shell that holds you, when you sit in the dark, wishing for that moment to come just a little faster, and with every wish, it does. I was really lucky. I'm in a wonderful church choir at Normandale Lutheran Church, and we will take trips abroad to do choir tours every once in a while. We used to before the pandemic anyway. And we went to Norway and Sweden, and this poem was inspired by that trip. The speed of light. In Trondheim, the light spoke. The light lined the streets like white fox fur. The light soaked through the red-stained glass into the caverned cathedral as it had for 1,000 years. Light fingered the edges of evening as if hemming a nightgown, never quite letting go. Light cast itself against my body to cast a long shadow against the gray stone buildings. Light pried open the roses. Light circled me like an impatient dog, whether I ran or stood still. In Uppsala, the light was silent. The light dusted the stone's gold in Linnaeus's garden, settled itself at his grassy table. Light chased the red and blue bocce balls strewn on the court, turning the grass translucent. Over a hollow willow tree, the light coaxed out green branches from their apparently dead wood and led their delicate leaves down into the pond, a veil of shadows, an artifact of thought, only visible when I stood still, only palpable when I walked through it. This next one, I have a nephew named Joe, and one time he's really, really smart, and we were talking about origami, and this poem just came to me a few days later. Origami, lines for Joe. Once you hold a belief, it folds itself into a flower, an ear, a star. In your deepest dreams, it rises, unfolds itself, as if inflated by a breath, blooming. When you wake, the creases stay, wish for the edges of the shape they once made. Okay. This next one is called A Dissection of Faith. One half relies on the details of photosynthesis, a religion of chlorophyll and light. The other half is held up by oceans. A leaf, a stepping stone, leading flesh to air, focusing the mind's eye. See, an entrance to a tree knot, the scent of sweet sap circling like a catacomb. Okay, this one is one of the Narcissus poems, and it was the one I wrote first. My Narcissus was a gift, a raw, round heart encased in paper brown skin that flaked off in my hands. He slept in my palm, nestled into the dark space as my thumb closed around him. After I put him into his bed, covered with cold earth, I waited, and he opened his fist, reached up through the soil with his 3-fingered hand. You know the rest of the story, how he became lost in himself, drowned in his idea of himself. All that's left now is his withered body, cut off, turning to dirt, the snow slowly burying him. But his heart, the one I loved first, beats underground. And I have 2 more. I don't know about you all, but I spend a lot of time in the summer trying to get all the weeds out of my garden and being outside, and so this one is about landscaping and not about landscaping. Reflections on a marriage. I remember us spreading the layer of sand, arranging the stones carefully like puzzle pieces, sweeping the cracks with gravel. How we marveled at the cold geometric grayness, hiding the lumpy black dirt that had invited weeds stuck to the soles of our shoes. Now no one asks what is under the stones next to the tumble of blooms, a tangle of flower roots thrust under and between, seeking the strength to heave or buckle the paved present, go back to wildness. While you nap in a lawn chair this afternoon, I notice the moss creeping along the widening cracks, fuzzy green lines. I like to think of the flower roots content in the damp underground. Is this why we cut them off at the stems and offer them to each other? Because we fear the naked, dirt-caked center of ourselves? Or is it because we can't bear to rip out their beating hearts, leaving them instead to die softly, alone, under the stones? And this last one, okay, I love sonnets. I love writing sonnets. I love reading sonnets. My sonnets are stealth sonnets. So if you look at the page, you can see that there's rhyming, but you might not hear it because I enjam lines. So if you want to listen for where the lines end and where they rhyme, you can do that, or you can just sit back and listen, whatever you want to do. This is called, again, this is the final poem of the collection, the last Narcissus poem called My Narcissus. The rag I use to clean the floor is flannel, green plaid, a scrap of the shirt I bought for you 10 years ago that you wore every weekend, soft and warm, clad for the sharp fall afternoons, raking leaves, wind blown, the winter nights by the fireplace, keeping us warm, the spring planting of apple trees, willows, and bulbs, the summer nights tending the fire pit, watching the morning star rise in an arc. That shirt held the sweet smell of smoke, and even now as I scrub, the scent of charcoal burnt rises out of the soapy rag, and I wonder if you ever think about the parts of you that got lost, if what you prize has changed since we last spoke. Whether scent or stink, the cloth sticks to my thoughts, reminds me of the old you, whose lonely offices brought me joy, who never knew. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kris. I enjoyed that very much.
That was great, Kris.
Thanks, everybody, for watching us tonight. Thank you, the poets, for reading. Thank you, Valerie Lockhart and Minneapolis Television Network for putting this on. And hopefully we have many more. Good night.
Good night.
Are we still live?